Communication skills that make the difference. How you handle communication affects your performance both within the company and in your own career. In this next segment, you'll learn why communication is a critical factor in your success as a supervisor and how to lead successful meetings. Communicate with your boss, use listening skills, and give criticism without provoking. Here are 10 tips for successful meetings. Number 1, circulate the agenda in advance. Now, I know this seems like an obvious one. You would be amazed how many people show up to a meeting and do not have an idea of what is going on for the day. And here's what ends up happening. People end up wasting their time determining who is doing what and why are we doing this. Remember early in this training where I talked about defining as a critical stage in any project, including running successful meetings. If people don't know the what and the why, there will be a lot of time wasted early in the meeting trying to explain people's roles. So circulate the agenda in advance, if possible, at least 2 days in advance. Number 2, assign roles: a timekeeper, a minutes taker, and a gatekeeper. With the timekeeper, choose somebody who is good at keeping time. Now, this is not the place to put somebody who needs to improve their time management. You don't want them learning at other people's expense. What you can do, though, is assign a timekeeper who's good at tracking time and somebody who needs to get better at keeping time. They can sit by them and learn that position. A minutes taker, somebody who is taking the notes. This is a great position for somebody who is introverted. My suggestion on this, also to save time, is let them take the notes right into the computer rather than free writing or handwriting the notes, which need to be double data entered. I would also recommend using some type of a software, perhaps a mind mapping or a project management software, so that way you can import the notes right into the software, and then you can transfer that right into a Word document or another format to deliver to the people who are at the meeting. And then, of course, have a gatekeeper. The gatekeeper is somebody who will keep everybody out of the meeting so that the meeting can get accomplished. Number 3, distribute the handouts early. Several things will occur as a result of doing this. First of all, people will start to arrive early, and that will let people know any last-minute changes. They have the handout, they can see who's doing what, they know what to expect. I would also strongly encourage that you encourage people to arrive 5 to 15 minutes early. A great way to do this: have treats. Have some coffee or some beverages and some kind of a snack, because a lot of people will show up early to get their snacks, especially if once the meeting starts, everybody needs to be seated. Number 4, start on time and end on time. Please emphasize this. This is a big deal. This is a huge time waster. When you're encouraging people to start on time, you can use pain if they're not on time and payoff if they are on time. A little bit of pain. Some organizations will have a basket that people have to put $5 or $20 or whatever the range is based on the salary into that basket, and then that basket that's collected goes to some charitable organization. And it encourages people, by associating a little bit of pain with being late, for them to be on time. And then some kind of a payoff. Perhaps the person who is on time, maybe there's some kind of a reward that's given, a coffee card or a gift card of some sort, maybe every quarter for the person who has the best time record. Emphasize we start on time. Emphasize we end on time. And my suggestion is put people who struggle with being on time at the beginning of the meeting and let people know if you miss your time slot, you will be moved to the end of the meeting if there's time, and if not, it will go on to the next agenda. Number 5, cover problems first, planning second, miscellaneous third. Always start with the problems first. Planning, how are we going to fix those problems? Miscellaneous. Now realize sometimes people get caught up in the details of the miscellaneous and they go on these rabbit trails and you're going, where is this person going in this meeting? Remember, there's always got to be somebody in the meeting, preferably several somebodies who say, okay, let's rein this back in, let's get back on topic. What was the point of what we were discussing? And you notice these are not offensive segues back to the original topic. Because if you let somebody who is a natural talker in a meeting go off of topic, they will continue to do it unless somebody reins them back in. Number 6, state the meeting's purpose at the beginning. Remember the what and the why. Then stick to your agenda. There will always be people who will try to push the agenda. Can I throw something in here at the last minute? I know I was supposed to get this to you 2 days in advance. The only way you will stop people from throwing things at you in the last minute is if you stick to your agenda. Summarize the meeting decisions. You're doing this, and here's the deadline on that, here's the budget on that. Have people say, yep, I'm doing this, I will take care of this. Now we're setting SMART goals within that meeting. Number 9, be sure everyone has had a chance to contribute and no one monopolizes the conversation. I already talked about when people monopolize, rein them back in. If you have some people within the meeting who do not contribute, yet you know they have great ideas, here are some things that you can do with those people. Number 1, you can have them submit their ideas in writing and then bring that writing with them, and you as the facilitator can say, Joe, you had some comments here that we spoke about earlier and you mentioned in the email you sent me. You tell them what they said. Could you elaborate on that a little bit for me? Notice now it's Joe and you having a conversation rather than Joe having to stand up and present to the entire team, which can be a little bit intimidating. If the person is still a little bit intimidated, you, if you would like as a facilitator, can read Joe's comments and distribute those for the team members. That way, the team members are not looking at Joe, they're looking at the notes from Joe. Another thing that you can do is, again, single out people and ask for feedback. If there is one dominant contributor or 2 dominant contributors within the meeting, what you can do, use this technique is, okay, so hang on just a quick sec. Does anybody else have some input on this issue? So you wait at least 3 or 4 seconds for somebody to respond. And then if nobody responds, this is when you single somebody out. Yoko, I remember you telling me that you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed in your work because you're giving some jobs beyond your capability and capacity. What are some things that you would like in order to lessen your workload? Now what you're doing is you're saying Yoko's words, and Yoko is having the courage to come in and say, yeah, can somebody else pick up this project? Can somebody else take care of this? And that way, it's taken care of in the meeting setting, and nobody is monopolizing the conversation. Number 10, summarize the meeting 10 to 15 minutes before it's over. Now, obviously, if this is a shorter meeting, then you're just going to use the last 5 minutes of the meeting. The main thing is, though, prepare time to summarize. Let's move now to writing memos and letters. Before writing, ask yourself the following 3 questions. Number 1, to whom am I writing? Number 2, why am I writing to this person? And number 3, what do I want to say? Now let's take them one at a time briefly. Number 1, to whom am I writing? Who are you writing to? What is their position? Are they your boss? Are they a coworker? Are they a client? What type of tone would you like to set? Is this a friendly letter? Is this a friendly email or memo? How would you like to address this person? What is their personality style? Are they a person who you need to ask them, hey, how was your weekend? Or, oh, I hope you had a great time. Do they need a little bit of relationship with you before you get to the point? Or are they a bottom line type of person? To whom am I writing? The second question, why am I writing to this person? What is the point? I mean, that is the big question. What is the point of what I have to say? Or the so what factor? Just to give information? Is it for a call to action? Is it for a change in behavior? Why are you writing this? And this is where hinting does not factor in. Because remember, when it comes to the written word, you must say what you mean so that people will understand what you're trying to say. Make sure you understand, first and foremost, what do I want? And then, what do I want to say? And how do I want to say it? How am I going to say this so this person understands and I can get my meaning across? Again, this will eliminate a lot of the guess factor. A couple of other things to keep in mind while writing. Write the way you speak. In this day and age, Conversation is much more real than formal grammar. Now, for those of you grammar people are thinking, no, formal grammar is important. Yes, it is. As I mentioned earlier, we do not speak in the Old English language any longer. Therefore, we should not type or send our message the way that it's like, to whom it may concern. I would like to thank you for the opportunity. No. Hey, Jeff, it's Dawn. Just a quick follow-up to thank you. Now, this is going to be a lot more casual, yet when you have that relationship with the person, they're going to receive this letter or this memo or this email, and they're going to say, oh, I know this is from you. Because when it comes to the written word, what influences the interpretation of your message is the relationship people have with you, and that includes the way you speak. Keep it short and keep it sweet. Remember, bullet points. If you'd like to elaborate on those bullet points, you can elaborate. Also remember, in a paragraph, there is one main idea, and then the sentences underneath that support the main idea. 10 to 12 words per sentence, maybe 3, no more than 4 sentences within a paragraph. Always start with the most important and always end with the most important, because when people are reading paragraphs, they read the first line and they jump to the last line. Sometimes if you have something important in the middle, people will miss it. Edit and rewrite. And make sure if it's something that needs to go out and it is putting your best foot forward, this is maybe making a first impression with somebody, make sure you have somebody else proofread it. After you've finished writing it, ask yourself, have I opened with the most important idea? Again, if this is an email and there's a call to action, make sure you put that in your subject line or your header. For example, if you have a staff meeting Thursday at 9 a.m., and perhaps there's been a time change or the meeting has been canceled, make sure you include that in the header. Staff meeting, 9 a.m., canceled. In fact, better yet, just pull out the 9 a.m. Staff meeting, Thursday, canceled. Because realize there are some people you work with, they're not going to open that email until Wednesday because they're preparing for staff meeting. And then after they have everything ready, they open up their email and it's like, why didn't this person put this in the call to action line or the subject line? And then also make sure your next line, when a person opens the paragraph, if there is something that you need a response to by a certain time, highlight that at the beginning. Please respond to this by 2 p.m. today, Thursday the 25th, whatever today's date might be. Put the time, put the date, because again, if they open that email tomorrow, they might be thinking, oh, I have until 2 p.m. today. So put the specific date and time. Have I organized the rest of my thoughts in a logical progression? Remember, A, B, C. It's not random jumping around. People cannot jump into your brain or a conversation. They can only read what's written before them. And then lastly, have I stated the action I want the reader to take? And we've already covered that. Let's move on. How to manage up the ladder. Tips for communicating with your boss and executives. In your workbook that you've printed out, there is a quiz. What I'd like you to do is take that quiz and see what is your level of communication skill with your boss and with other executives. Because there are some people who think, I want to be more respected by my boss. I want my ideas to be heard by my boss. And realize if a person is shy or if a person says nothing or they wait to be spoken to, oftentimes their ideas will never be heard. Or if they're the whiner or the complainer, because they always talk about problems instead of solutions to problems, they're not going to be heard. So remember, speak up, be assertive, ask questions, and give answers. This is the best way to communicate with people who are in positions of authority. And then most important, plan ahead. Script what you're going to say. Practice in front of a bathroom mirror or even video camera. If you have a little video on your computer, take a video of yourself and see what you look like. And if you're thinking to yourself, oh my gosh, no wonder they don't take me seriously, then you may want to brush up on your communication skills. Go through a communications class. Do something to improve your written skills. Let's move now to effective listening. There are 6 keys to do just that. First of all, pay full attention to the speaker. Now let me ask you, how can you tell when somebody's listening to you? Yeah, with their body language. They're leaning forward. They're paying attention. They're not doing one of these. Go ahead, I'm listening, and underneath their desk they have their phone. No, go ahead, I'm listening. Okay, we've got to pay full attention. In fact, at a lot of meetings, whether they're group meetings or one-on-one meetings, people will silence their phone or put them into a basket when they head into that room. Number 2, ask for an overview statement. As the speaker is getting started, it is really good for them to say, here's what we're going to cover today. Now, if they don't, if you are in a one-on-one conversation, it is completely all right as a listener to ask the speaker what they want you to be listening for. Now, you notice this part of listening is not listening, it's speaking. What a lot of people don't realize is part of listening is actually asking good questions. And so remember I said earlier, as the receiver of information, it is your responsibility to ask for clarification. Number 3, take notes. Take notes, write those notes down, put your understanding, and actually when you have a question with something that you need more clarification, then you can look at the speaker and say, hang on just a second, I heard you say this and this. Could you help me understand this? I'm not quite sure I heard it correctly. Or something like that. You notice though, you're not saying, wait a minute, you contradicted yourself. That's not what you said here. Okay, and I know I'm being a little extreme here. Realize though, some people don't interrupt the speaker as they're speaking because they don't want to be rude and they're afraid that that's what they'll sound like. Most of the time, though, if you just ask for clarification, I need you to repeat that instead of you didn't say that clearly. Ask for what you need instead of telling them what they're not doing right. Let's move on. Number 4, listen for the speaker's intent. There are times when a speaker will say something inappropriate. As I mentioned earlier, if people like you, they will overlook your shortcomings. And this is not about being liked or being popular. It is about being respectful and being a person of integrity. So even if somebody says something a little bit off in a conversation, give them the benefit of the doubt, especially if everything else they've been doing has been lining up with a good measure of integrity. Number 5, paraphrase your understanding. Make sure you understand what the other person is trying to say. Paraphrase for understanding. I've given several illustrations of that as we've gone through this training. And number 6, listen before you respond. I call this the 2-second rule. Remember when you learned how to drive? Your driver's ed teacher probably told you to follow 2 seconds behind the person in front of you is a safe driving distance. 1001, 1002, and if you were any closer than that, your reaction time, we would be reacting to an accident instead of responding to a traffic situation. The same thing goes with listening. Give yourself the same 2-second rule. When somebody speaks to you, before you respond, 1001, 1002, of course you say silently to yourself. And this is how you respond instead of react. One last way to remember this technique is in regards to medicine. If a person is taking medicine and they have a good response to that medicine, that means it's working. If they have a negative reaction to that medicine, that means it's not working. So give yourself that 2-second safety listening zone. Let's move now to criticism and negative feedback without provoking the other person. Begin by criticizing the action, not the person. Instead of, PJ, you messed up on the data here. You put the wrong numbers in. How many times do I have to tell you? Realize that's a reaction, not a planned response. If you do not want the person to take defense, then we point to the action instead of the person, and it might be something like this. PJ, let's take a look at the data. I noticed the data here was different than the data here. Can you tell me what we're doing here? And you're giving PJ the opportunity to save face and also correct their own mistake without feeling blamed. They will see it, they will say, oh, I must have missed something here. Oh, I put the wrong data in. Let me fix that. Now what you're doing is you're letting them fix the problem versus just pointing it out. Another bonus tip on this, when you're speaking with the person, come up to their side, not straight on with them. And then again, you're not attacking the person. You're aligning yourself with them and looking at the issue together. Specified documentation. Be specific in your documentation. Remember to bring the facts in here, just the facts and not your opinion. Instead of, she had a bad attitude. No. She put her hands on her hips, rolled her eyes, and with an exasperated sigh said, "What? Yeah, I'll do it." That is a much better description of a bad attitude. Use I messages instead of "you never listen, you always get the last word, it doesn't matter what I have to say." We want to use I messages. I need you to listen. I need you to let me finish. I need you to know this is important. I say, let's take a lesson from Dr. Phil McGraw. Now, you've all heard Dr. Phil, and if you haven't, he sounds a little bit like this. We teach people to treat us the way they do. Let me say that again. We teach people to treat us the way that they do. And if we say you emphatically, never listen, you always, you never, what we're doing is we're telling our listener, I'm not expecting you to respect me. And we're doing it with such intensity, we are guaranteed to get those results, and people will meet our expectations, no matter how high or how low they are. If you want people to meet a higher expectation, let them know, I need you to step up. I need you to finish what you've started. I need this, and the project requires this. How can we make this happen? Then allow the employee to talk. Let them tell you what they think. Listen to what they have to say, and remember that safe listening distance. Yep. Listen for at least 2 seconds. Don't speak after they've finished so you can process what they've said. Ask for solutions. If somebody is saying, I can't do this, I don't know how to do that, this is not the time to say, Don Jones says you should bring solutions. No, this is not the time to say that. What this is the time for is to look at the person and say, okay, you've told me what you don't want. What do you want? And then once again, listen. Give your expectations. I mentioned this already. Here's my expectations. Here's the project's expectations. Here's the job requirements. Here's the client expectations. State what the expectations are. And remember, include the expectations of time, the quality of work, and the budget or the man hours to stay within to accomplish the job at hand. Review and follow up. Here are 6 tips for overcoming communication barriers. First of all, make sure you're not displaying inadequate listening, both you and them. I have a life coach, Coach Lori is her name, and an exercise she gave me years ago was to help improve my listening. This was the technique she gave me. She said, Dawn, when you don't hear someone, stop yourself at the beginning of the conversation or at the point that you've stopped listening and ask the person to repeat themselves. She then cautioned me and said, don't be surprised if you do this at least 4 or 5 times the first minute of conversation. Wow. Now, when she said that, she also said, now don't take this personally. I tell all of my clients the same thing. You'd be amazed what poor listeners most of us are. I decided to accept that challenge. And right there in the middle of our coaching call, a couple of times I had to say, excuse me, Lori, could you repeat that? And then I'd say, could you say that one more time? I want to make sure I fully understand what you're saying. And I came up with the most creative ways to say, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Could you say that again? And really, if you choose to accept this action item, you will become a much, much better listener. And as a bonus, your ability to focus and listen, comprehend, remember, retain, and recall the conversation will go up substantially. Also, when you're communicating, here's another barrier that you can overcome. Be clear and concise, both with your message and with your delivery. I once had a speech teacher say, the best way to communicate your message is to be clear and concise in your diction. When you are stating your words, enunciate every single word. Now, you notice you can speak at a very rapid rate if you enunciate every single word. Yeah, you can speak at a very slow rate, and people can't understand what you're saying. So make sure whether you're speaking quickly or slowly, you enunciate your words. All right. Number 3, confront preconceived ideas. In the book, Speed of Trust, Covey goes on to reference when 2 companies merged that he was a part of, the people who knew him and trusted him trusted his intentions, whereas the people who were coming into this company through this merge were in fear that their jobs were going to be lost or possibly taken over by another person. And so at one point in the staff meeting, Covey stopped the meeting and said, we need to stop this. And we need to talk about establishing trust with each other. This is a no-holds-barred meeting. Put onto the table, what are your thoughts and what are your concerns? And that was the beginning of establishing trust with the new team. The 4th concept, be aware of differences in meaning, especially as you travel abroad or if you work with people from different cultures. Realize if you're traveling to a foreign culture, you're not going to say, is it okay if I wear pants to the meeting? You're going to say, is it okay if I wear trousers to the meeting? You're going to make sure to learn the language. Realize when you speak in other countries such as Italy, words have a very, very close relationship. You could go around wishing everybody a happy new year because the word for new year is going to be new is buon, good. It's going to be good year. And realize the word annual is very similar to a part of the human body that has nothing to do with a happy new year. And you could be offending your host or your person that you work with who speaks a different language. Also watch for differences in touch. Some cultures are a little bit more cautious when it comes to touch or showing the bottoms of the feet. So be aware of differences in meaning and interpretation. And do your best to use bias-free language. It is people, it is everyone, instead of he or she. And if you do use he or she, make sure you use both as much as possible. Instead of fireman, it's firefighter. Instead of policeman, it's police officer. So just be aware of those differences and do your best to deliver the message to the person in an unbiased language. Number 6, repeat the message and paraphrase. We have covered this, so let's move on. In order to make powerful presentations that captivate and persuade your audience, you must use the techniques that we've been discussing throughout this presentation. At the same time, you've got to remember to go to the foundation and the fundamentals of communication. According to Dr. Albert Mehrabian, he has done extensive research on how people interpret the meaning of your message. You may have heard throughout the years, 55% of your message is interpreted by your body language, 38% by your tone and tempo, and 7% by your words. Now, there are some myths out there that say, oh, no, then that means words are not important and you should be able to understand this message if we don't use words. No. That is not the purpose of this research. The purpose of this research was simple words. Yes, no, maybe. You could say the same word, and based on your body language and your tone and tempo, that would determine the interpretation of your message. So let's say, for example, you ask a coworker to do something for you, and the first response, you say, hey, can you take care of this report and get this done for me before the day is over? And they look at you and they say, maybe. Okay? The second one, they say, maybe. And the third one, they say, maybe. Let's take them one at a time. The first one, is a genuine maybe. The hands are extended. There's an unsure look on their face. There's a tentativeness in their voice. Maybe. You don't know if it's a yes or no. Let's go to the second one. Maybe. Now, ain't happening. No way. Not going to occur. Hands on the hip. growling, low tone. Eyes back and forth, rolling them, no. In a menacing tone, she said, maybe. And then the last one, maybe. Now this one, she's probably going to say, yeah, I'll do the work for you, and there's going to be a condition attached. I'll do this for you if you take care of this for me. And that is the whole point of this. So when you go to deliver your powerful presentation, people are looking at what you say before you ever speak. So let's tie that into a few more tips. Here are 4 elements of a great presentation. First of all, design and flow. Have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And as you're taught in Toastmasters type groups, tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. As far as delivery, this is not about, putting on a show for them or being entertaining. It's about being engaging. Connect with your audience. Be real. Use a bit of vocal variety, just like you've been hearing through this presentation, to capture people's attention. Now, a steady diet of up and down like this while you're speaking could sound a bit like a roller coaster, and you don't want to be stuck there. And you don't want to be so melodic that you sound like you're reading somebody a bedtime story. You don't want to be phony or fake or a little too over the top at the same time. Be intense. Even right now as I'm demonstrating with a whisper, you can be intense and still capture people's attention. Be brief. Get to your point. If you're going to tell a story, remember the so what factor. Bring that back in. So what? What does this have to do with you? Which moves us to the last part, your content. It must be relevant. Constantly ask yourself, what's in it for them? What's in it for them? Too many times, inexperienced speakers will tell you all about them. And really, as an audience, we don't care. We only care if what the speaker has to say is relevant to us. So if you do share a story that is relevant to you, make sure you tie it in to your audience. Transition. Perhaps you've experienced something like this. Perhaps you've known somebody like this. Another thing you can do if you have lots of personal examples is put them in a third-person context. It's not all about you as the speaker, no more than it is about me, the speaker. We are the messenger of the message. So if you relate a story, even put it into third person if it is your own. Here are 8 classic ways to capture a group's undivided attention. First of all, use a relevant maxim. Find something. If you are in an industry where people are very familiar with current events and things that are going on that are directly related to that industry, relate a relevant maxim. Explain by an analogy. I love this one in the book, Leadership and Self-Deception by the Arbinger Institute. One of the opening stories in this book talks about an infant who is learning how to walk, and all she knows how to do is back herself up by her hands until she comes to a piece of furniture, at which point, not knowing how to do anything else, she continues to back herself up until she successfully wedges herself under the furniture, at which point she begins to cry and throw a fit. The authors go on to say, if the infant could speak, she would probably blame the furniture. And as I like to add, or even the person who put the furniture there to begin with. Now you notice that story is a simple story. It's an analogy. Yet if you're talking about difficult people or poor behavior, you can refer back to that story as you continue your message. Number 3, ask a question. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever found yourself giving a presentation wondering, how am I going to open this presentation? That would be a simple example of a question you could ask if you're giving a presentation on how to give presentations. You can also use a quotation. You notice I started our series together with a quote from the timeless Covey 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It does not matter if it's a new quote or a quote that's thousands of years old or just a quarter of a century old. Use a quote that is proven and time-tested helps. Tell a story of human interest, some type of an angle. skill that ties in to capture your audience's heart. If you are just giving facts, you will not capture your audience's heart. Now, while stories are important and they do capture the heart, remember you must support the story with a fact. Otherwise, you're just moving people's emotions. And when it comes to powerful presentations, you must have facts. State a statistic, state a fact, then tell your story to support that, connecting both the mind and the heart. Use your visuals, pictures, graphs, demonstration, video clips. You can even do things where you engage your audience and bring somebody up to help you with your presentation. People love that, and make sure though that you've prepared them in advance, because a lot of people don't like those kinds of surprises. So make sure you've got the right person or ask for a volunteer. Change your pacing. This is with your wording, as I mentioned earlier, with your tone, your tempo, with your intensity. And if you are moving in an audience that is a large audience and you have a large platform, some things you can do is utilize your stage. Get a roving microphone. Don't be caught hiding behind the podium. Put that lapel mic on or the headset mic on and walk to the farthest corner, then look to the opposing opposite corner of the last person in the back row, who oftentimes gets left out a large presentation, and deliver your message to them. Then let your message hang in the air while you walk across the platform to the other side and you deliver it to the other farthest point. Then you deliver to the back of your audience. You have broken your audience into zones. As performance coach expert Tom Jackson explains, break your audience into zones 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and work the back of your audience first, then move yourself to the front. And usually inexperienced speakers only talk to 1 or 2 people right in the front row. This way you're hitting all of your audience. And remember this, whether you're communicating with an audience of 1, 1,000, or 10,000 people, it doesn't matter. Always deliver your message as though you're speaking to one person. This is not, "Hello, everyone!" Because you might be receiving the message and think to yourself, "Everyone, that's just me and the dog." Oh wait, unless there are no dogs allowed in your work. Then it might be, "Hey, it's just me and my coworkers here." So make sure you say you. Speak as though you're having a conversation with one person, even if it's a large body of people. You can break that zone right here of 1,000 people into a group of 1. It becomes a unit. And here are some extra ways to make your audience really like you. Don't violate their time or trust. Don't assume just because you had a great presentation last time with this audience or yesterday with a different audience that you can just walk in and kind of wing it. Show up prepared, show up early, establish trust, be respectful, remind yourself regularly, especially if you give regular presentations, remind yourself, I'm only as good as my last presentation. Not only will this help keep you sharp and help keep your skills sharp, it'll also throw in some humility, because there's nothing worse than a speaker believing their own press that they really are that great. Because really, on the scale of life, we're only as good as our last presentation. Meet and greet early. Take the time to look for some smiling faces in your audience. And if you're a little bit nervous, instead of saying, "Oh my gosh, I'm so nervous," when you meet that person, look at them and say, "Oh, I'm so glad to see you and your smiling face. I'm going to be looking for you when I'm up on the platform delivering this message." Help your audience solve challenges. Yes, it's important to make them feel good. Yes, it's important to give them facts. It's also important to help them solve problems. Give them a tip or a technique. Let them practice it if time allows. And this can be something as simple as turn to your neighbor and try this on for size. For example, if you want them to solve the challenge of looking somebody in the eye without coming across as being intimidated or intimidating, you can have them turn to their neighbor. Look at the eye, the nose, and the mouth. eye, nose, mouth, and sometimes ear. Now, you're giving them a 30-second action to turn to their neighbor, practice, and engage in this activity. Now they are part of the conversation, and you've helped them overcome a challenge of being intimidated or intimidating when delivering a message and looking someone in the eye. Help them feel good about themselves. I do want to caution you on this one. It is okay to make your audience feel good about themselves. Remember, though, there is a danger of letting people feel too good about themselves that they're not motivated to change. This is kind of like the caution I talked about earlier with the cheerleader. You can, you can, you can, and really, they can't. They'll just feel good while they're failing miserably. So what you want to do is help them feel good about themselves and where they're at in their life right now. At the same time, challenge them about where they need to go in their life and some changes that might need to be made. Talk with them, not at them. You and I are having a conversation right now, and even though I don't know you, I'm not talking at you. I'm talking with you. If I ask you a question, I follow the safe listening rule. I wait 2 seconds for you to respond. And then I say what I think you might say or what I think you might be thinking. So we're having a dialogue, we're having a conversation, even though I don't know you personally. Have a conversation with your audience. Avoid jargon and cliches. If you're presenting your ideas to a group of project managers, you're not necessarily going to use terms that non-project managers wouldn't know if non-project managers are in that group. Maybe your audience is only 20% project managers and you've got 80% of people who manage projects. If you start off by saying, okay, we're going to talk about work breakdown structures, PERT charts, Gantt charts, we're going to talk about the critical path method, scope creep. At this point, you've lost the attention of your audience, except for a small minority in your audience. Instead, let your audience know we're going to talk about program management tools that the pros use. Wow! You've said everything without saying too much. Display empathy. Take the time to care about your audience. Be empathetic when you are delivering a message. If somebody responds, like if it's in a smaller group, a group of 1 to 10, and somebody shares something from their heart, this is not the time to be looking at your notes and going, okay, we've got to get moving. When something happens in the middle of your presentation, that is a moment. It is a moment to stop, acknowledge it, and decide how you're going to respond. Because this here is I'm just reacting. And we know that's not how we prepare for a great presentation. So plan for it in advance. Give yourself a moment to stop. If you need to take a 5-minute breather in the meeting, that's all right most of the time. Prepare for it, plan for it, allow some breathing room in your presentation, and then use a great story. Stories can be short or long. Use a great story. Let's move now to persuading others. To persuade your audience, discuss the differences of opinion. Realize in a public setting, if people have different viewpoints, they're going to feel stronger in a pack, according to M. Scott Peck. One of the things he says is an audience will develop a pack mentality. And if they are divided down the middle on their viewpoints, you will experience some of that tension. Remember, your goal is to build on common ground. Look at the similarities versus just the differences. Encourage the differences of opinion and lay the ground rules of being respectful of those differences. Identify your listeners' needs. What do they need? Do they need to be motivated? Do they need to be challenged? Do they need to be encouraged? Do they need to learn a new skill? What is the point of having you present an idea? Use positive motivation. When I teach people how to get organized and take control of their work and life, one of the techniques I use is how to get organized. And instead of saying, oh, I have to clean my workstation, no. We change the wording to a game, and the game is called the Where Does It Go game. What you're doing is you're persuading your listener to change the way they think about something they've struggled with for a lifetime. You're helping to change their perspective. And then you give them the answer. The Where Does It Go game, 1 of 3 places. You keep it, you toss it, or you file it. Now, just that one little technique that I've given you here in the middle of giving presentations, some of you will take that and go, I can play this game. I can ask myself at the end of the day, looking at my workstation, 15 minutes, where does it go? Keep it, toss it, file it. And yes, the round file is included in the file it segment. And then also use negative motivation. When I teach people how to break bad habits, one of the techniques that I talk about, the very first step of overcoming procrastination and eliminating bad habits is, first of all, ask yourself, what is it going to cost me if I don't change this behavior? And I let them feel it. I let them experience it. Let your audience feel the discomfort. If you want to motivate people for change, let them experience what it would feel like if they didn't. What's it going to cost them emotionally? What's it going to cost them in relationships? What's it going to cost them in promotions? What's it going to cost them financially? Let them feel it, not just understand it in their mind. Once you've let them experience that, then ask them, what is the cost of fixing this? Something you've put up with for 21 to 30 years, Covey's research has revealed you can fix in as little as 21 to 30 days if, and here's the caveat, if practiced with intensity, and that is positive motivation and negative motivation. What's it going to cost me positively, or actually first negatively, and what's it going to pay off positively? Use those techniques. In this segment, you learned why communication is a critical factor in your success as a supervisor and how to lead successful meetings, how to communicate effectively with your boss, how to utilize the best listening skills and actually how to improve those skills, and how to give criticism without provoking. In this next session, you will learn how to effectively correct problem behavior and improve poor performance.